Hello, everyone, and welcome to this 40 Days live event. My name is Adele Halliday, and I serve at the National Office of the United Church of Canada as the Anti-Racism and Equity Lead Staff. And it's a pleasure that you are here. This evening, we'll have some time to explore raising anti-racist children with Heather Beamish and Mary Nichol, and they'll introduce themselves a bit more fully in a moment. But first, just a few opening words. One is just to note that this, of course, is part of the 40 days of engagement on anti-racism. We're in the middle of week 3 at the moment, and there's lots happening. This week, there are several featured writers who have offered written reflections that represent some of the breadth of diversity across the church. They're all available online. We're gathered for this event, which will be recorded and available for a video afterwards, so it can be shared and reshared. There's also a featured book of the week. It's available from the United Church bookstore, and it's called How to Raise an Anti-Racist. It's a perfect accompaniment to this evening's exploration of raising anti-racist children. And if you chose to order this book or any two books, you would receive a discount of 20% if you use the code 40 days. So it's on ucrdstore.ca. So this and much more are all available on the 40 Days website, and I'll put the link in the chat in a moment. That's a great place to start the exploration of signing up for the newsletter, finding all of these, finding the rest of the live events, and finding all the written reflections and more. So thank you once again for being here. So with that, I will turn it over to Mary and Heather to introduce themselves and guide us through the rest of the evening. It's going to be an exciting evening. For everyone who's here, we would invite you, if you have questions, to please put them in the chat. We'll have some time for question and answers at closer to the end of the gathering. So please feel free to ask questions at any time, and we'll pick those up and respond. So Heather and Mary.
So great to be with you. So Heather and I chatted about how this evening will look, and I was going to start with sharing who I am and a bit about my personal journey. And so my name is Mary Nichol. My pronouns are she, her. I am a white, third generation, born in Canada, and my ancestors come from Ukraine, Italy, and Wales. I live and work on the unceded and traditional land of the Semiahmoo, Kwantlen, and Katzie First Nations. I give thanks to be on this land and commit to living and to care for and respect with creation. I currently serve as Pacific Mountain Regional Councillor in Pacific Mountain Regional Council as Regional Minister for First Third Ministry. And First Third Ministry are those in the first third of life. I spend much of my time in supporting, connecting, and equipping leaders, as well as supporting camping ministry. I am the mother of 2 daughters who are 22 and 24 years old, and I volunteer at Children's Church at Crossroads United in Delta. And in the spring of 2021, just to go into a bit about my journey in anti-racism work, in the spring of 2021, I attended a session talking with children about race at the Children's Spirituality Summit. And up until then, I had been reading and learning on my own regarding my own white privilege and racial justice. And this 1-hour session, led by Anthony Peterson, led me into space and action that I hadn't quite entered into before. And Anthony, in the too short of an hour session, I reached out to Anthony and he reached out to me, and we continued to work together in a couple of different leadership ventures. And last year, I was a part of a cohort for a week-long course on spirituality of race for children and youth. And as a white woman and a white parent and a white leader in the church, I've learned some important pieces, very important pieces that I'm holding up in my journey, and in particular, raising anti-racist children. So first, it's been quite a journey to get in touch with my own race story and recalling times for when I was a child, a teenager, a young adult, where I was aware of race and spoke about race or didn't. And so I've learned how important, one of the most important things, especially in that first engagement 2 years ago, was how important it is in raising children to be anti-racist, to talk about race with children early and often. And then as a white woman, how comfortable getting into comfort zone of what that means and discomfort. And so in my journey of reading and reflection, I was reading Raising White Children by Jennifer Henry. And in that, learning about the color blindness that I wasn't aware of when I was young, and in particular when my girls were little. I had conversations with them at the time, 2 years ago, asking them, what did we talk about regarding race? I remember being aware when my first daughter was born about books and toys in our home and in social media that were mainly representing white. And so I tried to integrate toys and books, but we didn't really talk in my journey as a parent about race and skin color. So that really came really forefront for me, the vital importance about talking about race with children early and often. And a couple of other things that started to come up for me was learning about how whiteness is hidden, and that my job as a white person to uncover the whiteness to name it. And so two important lines in my journey in the last couple of years have been one line that Ibram X. Kendi writes in How to Raise an Anti-Racist is, there's nothing, it's an anti-racist thought. There's nothing right about me because of the color of my skin. And Ibram writes, there's nothing right about me because of the color of my skin. This is an anti-racist idea that all white children need to be taught, internalized, and develop their sense through. White children need protection from all the verbal and nonverbal messages telling them that they're special because they're white. And Abraham goes on and to say there's nothing wrong. The other anti-racist idea is there is nothing wrong with me because of the color of my skin. And imagine if children of color are taught this anti-racist idea, internalize it, and develop their sense of self through it. And that children of color must be protected from the verbal and nonverbal messages telling them that they're not special because they're not white. So those talking about race early and often, and these ideas that are all around us, racism, as a white parent, I've started to collect some tools, and I can share them in the link later, but some fantastic resources that I've learned about and starting to use, both in my work and home, is this one. It's called a book, Story. Stories are a great way to get into race with children, and God's Holy Darkness by Sherry Green and Becca Selnick, an amazing resource. And the other one, Goodnight Racism by Ibram X. Kendi. So one of the actions in all of that I've been learning is actions. What can we start to do in particular in our communities of faith? And so taking a look at the resources, the toys, the Bible stories that are there, and doing an audit and incorporating books about race that helps facilitate conversations. One other point, and it just came to my desk as a resource before I finish my time and hand it over to Heather, is this new one it's called the Peace Table. And it's a Bible storybook. I just got it on my desk actually when I earlier today. And I just want to note the pictures are amazing. But I wanted to just reflect and share with you what they write about images in this particular Bible storybook. Jesus has intentionally been depicted with a variety of appearances in this book. And in The Faces of Jesus, Reverend Frederick Buckner explores how a diversity of representations helps a diversity of people to understand the significance of Jesus's incarnation. Jesus was born a Jewish child in a Middle Eastern family, So some illustrations show him with that appearance. But Jesus also transcends race and culture, and God is God incarnate, God with us, for all people in all places and all times. So it is our prayer that when children see these varied representations of Jesus, they will more easily recognize the image of God within themselves and each other. So just this is an illustration to start to look at what resources are around and what storybooks are around in both homes and in communities of faith. Just a little portion of my journey to share with you this evening to get us started. I would love to turn it over to Heather.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Mary. I really appreciate you sharing your story and journey with us, the journey of growth and learning. I feel like that's one that I'm excited to talk to a little bit more tonight. I'm just honestly sitting in a lot of gratitude right now for being able to be here with all of you, to be able to share this space tonight. I know that gathering around a topic like this is sacred. It's sacred because in this room tonight, there is a desire for growth, a desire for learning, a desire to lean into equity in a greater degree. That's why you're here. That's why we're here. And that makes me really excited. That makes me really excited about what we're doing together as a community, as Canadians, as a body of faith. And so I just want to start and open the room by honoring your energy and your commitment to this practice of learning what it means to step up and step into allyship in greater degrees so that collectively we can flourish and thrive together. Yeah, I'm really excited about that. I want to just also say a huge, huge thank you to Adele. Adele is championing this work at the head office of the United Church of Canada, and getting to work with her on this project was such a delight. I just got to hear more about her passion for the work that she's doing, and it was so great to be able to learn her story and her journey within the United Church community. Hearing that she's been part of different churches and communities within the United Church for years. And so, I just feel like the relationship that we were able to build through this project and getting to see inside the vision and dedication she has to the important work of anti-racism and community flourishing, it's beautiful. And I love the annual deep dive the United Church takes to energetically confront the roots of racism within the institution and plant new seeds of unity, equity, and possibility within the hearts of our community members. And so I love that we're gathering around these pillars and that energy tonight. So once again, thank you. My name is Heather. My pronouns are she and her, and I am coming to you from Toronto, where my beautiful wife and I live, love, and organize. And I am an author, an artist, and a speaker. And I've been facilitating conversations around the important topics of inclusion, faith, equity, and diversity for almost 15 years now. And one thing that I think is really fun about, specifically about the intersections that I kind of carry when it comes to art and facilitation and workshops and teaching and training, is that my art helps me keep grounded and connected to the conversations of equity, because my art invites me to be embodied and ask myself, how does this situation, how does this information make me feel? How does it interact with my physical body? What's the wisdom of my body telling me in this? And so I just love how each of them feed into one another. And so tonight, just in the time that I have with all of you, I want to invite you into a poetic conversation. So because I'm an artist, I love spoken word poetry, and poetry in itself is just my favorite medium. And so tonight I want to weave some poetry into our conversation. When I say we're going to have a poetic conversation, I just mean that the pace is going to be a little slower. You know, we're not going to rush through the moments of pause. I really want to invite you to reflect with me as we engage together with this content. I don't want to talk at you. I want us to feel it together and let the wisdom bubbling up in our gathering speak to us. Allow us to think out of the box when it comes to applying this content to our contexts, our communities, for us to consider what it looks like for us to tangibly live into these principles tonight. So I'm going to talk us through some tenets around allyship, which I'm really excited about, because the energy of allyship is what is woven into the texts and the pages of the I Am a Changemaker content. And I love it because I think that allyship is the physical embodiment of love. And as people of faith, we've been invited into a life of love, into a cultivation of love. And so allyship being the embodiment, the essence of love, I'm so excited to be able to talk about where the I Am the Changemaker content was birthed out of. So this is a new curriculum for those who don't know what this is. This is a brand new curriculum that the United Church of Canada is releasing as a resource to their churches, to the parents, to the community members, so that our communities will have language, will have tools, will be able to engage with dialogue, meaningful dialogue around the important tenets of allyship, equity, and inclusion. And this gets me really excited because one of the things that Mary was talking about in her session is that it's so important that we start to have these conversations around equity and race soon, early and often. Early and often is what the tenet is. And so having this resource in our toolkit to be able to help our Sunday school teachers and our parents and our community members as a whole talk about and engage with the important conversation of racial equity is just exciting. To be honest, this content is very, like, it's one of a kind in the church curriculum atmosphere. I was actually a children's pastor in Pentecostal and evangelical churches for many years. And it was hard to find tools and resources to have these important conversations with my students. You know, as a person of color and a queer woman and someone who cares a lot about justice, I was interested in finding tools and resources to be able to share with my students and community. And at the time, there wasn't any. And so the fact that it's exciting that the United Church has had that foresight to be able to dream up this resource for our churches and our communities. And that gets me really excited. And that is a nod to the work that Adele, Mary, and Ren and the team over there are doing at the head office. And so I'm really excited about where, how things are shaping up at the office. And so that's great. So I want to talk a little bit with you about where the I Am a Changemaker content was birthed out of. You know, the whole time when I was dreaming and researching and writing the curriculum, I kept on circling back to my main motivation behind creating the content. And my main motivation, that thing that I kept on circling back to, that was my goal that I was trying to accomplish while writing the content, was I want to equip the reader with tools for liberation so that they feel empowered to do the work of love, to embody the energy of love in their communities, in their lives, in their friendships, in their relationships. The whole purpose was liberation and empowerment. And so ensuring that the tenets and the truths of equity, the principles of equity, were woven into the lessons and into the intention behind the content. I'm so thankful to have scripture and Bible verse and to be able to anchor those. So this content is theologically grounded. It's full of scriptures and stories and examples from the Bible of people who lived into love, who stood up for what they believed in. And honestly, one of my favorite in the Bible example who did that is Jesus. You know, the way that Jesus lived and embodied love and highlighted the core essentials of Christianity and showed up in his communities and within conversations that he had, it's allyship on display. It's racial equity embodied. Jesus was the first change maker. Jesus is our example and continues to be our example. And so in this curriculum, we continue to point back to his example. We continue to point back to how we can better show up and be little Christians, right? And so I'm really excited about that. And to help highlight a little bit more of that, I'm just going to play a quick video that shows, let me get out of this right here. I'm going to play a quick video for you. Oopsie. There we go. Perfect. I love that you're all watching me navigate this. I'm like, doo-doo-doo. But in this video here, it's a video that we created for the curriculum, for the I Am a Changemaker curriculum. And as a spoken word poet, I was able to weave some of my poems and stories into the content. And I wrote unique custom pieces that spoke to the tenets that the curriculum talks about. And so this piece is a piece from one of the lessons, and it's one that talks about allyship. And I'm excited to share it with you. So let's go ahead and play that. Jesus traded his comfort and status so that no one would be left out. He spoke the truth about what mattered to God so that there was no doubt. He came to earth and embodied how perfect love would interact with our humanity. His commitment to courage and kindness highlighted the core essentials for Christianity. He was tough and tender, nurturing and bold. He spoke truth
to power and accepted everyone into his fold. No one's problems ever made him uncomfortable or nervous. He advocated for what he cared for. It was never just lip service. He didn't live for his friends' approval. He was a risk taker. He was guided by love and full of hope. That's what made him a change maker.
There it is, Jesus, the OG ally, the original ally that showcased for us, to us, what allyship looks like. I love that. So let's talk a little bit more tonight. I'm really excited that we're gathered here and in this learning space during the 40 days of anti-racism work. And so tonight, I really want to practically give you some tools that you can leave here feeling excited about. Tonight, I want to deep dive into the tenets of allyship and just pull out a few simple truths that if we walk out, live out, embody, we can show up as better allies to communities of need, to racialized communities, to our queer siblings, to anybody who we notice the tentacles of oppression coming into their life. And so, what is allyship? In its most basic form, it's the relational commitment to journey alongside marginalized communities until they can access the dignity and power that is the birthright of all humans. I love that. I love that. A relational commitment. Right there is a little bit of a tell of where we're going with what allyship looks like. Because that's exactly it. Allyship looks like something. Being an ally has an expression. It looks like something. It can be felt. It can be traced back. It can be witnessed by other people. It's not just a nice feeling. It's the practice of making space and building bigger tables. It's the practice of making space and building bigger tables. We're talking about tables of inclusion, tables of belonging, recognizing and looking around our communities and asking ourselves, who's missing from our table? And I wonder what kind of systems are in place that are preventing those communities from feeling like they can engage with and access belonging in our space. Because if people aren't showing up, there's usually a reason. And so allyship invites us to slow down. Allyship invites us to step back and engage in that journey of committed relational equity embodying. And it is the tangible byproduct of an individual and an organization, a faith community, your Bible study, your family committing to this. It's the byproduct of a committed group embodying the worldview that's rooted in gratitude, a worldview that's rooted in mutuality and the belief in collective flourishing. Essentially, an ally is a change maker. It's a change maker. So, if we understand that allyship is a verb, then these 3 P's of allyship will help us deepen our commitment to this restorative posture. So allyship is a practice, allyship is personal, and allyship is practical. I really like the 3 Ps even for myself. I feel like that's a great way. It helps me to remember, and I like the alliteration of it all. But let's first break this down. So what does it mean for allyship to be a practice? Well, just like any other skill that we have and we develop and we nurture in our lives, our effectiveness and proficiency when it comes to that particular skill, it develops over time. You know, as much as I like to play basketball, I have to admit that I didn't just wake up one day and all of a sudden be able to shoot hoops and do layups and all that kind of stuff. It takes practice. And just like anything we commit ourselves to, anything that we want to be good at, we know that that takes intention, time, and effort. And the great thing is that when we practice something, if we don't stop learning, listening, we will continue to get better at that particular thing. And so as we continue to invest in the practice of allyship, it evolves. And it evolves through the various seasons of our life. And within that acknowledgement that we're not going to be pros at being allies overnight is also this beautiful invitation into the practice of curiosity. And curiosity keeps our hearts and our minds engaged with the deepening practice of allyship. So as we discover new and unique ways to personally support the people in our lives, the racialized people in our lives, the people of color that we know, we practice and embody allyship. It's also very helpful if in our institutions and our organizations, if there are distinct, clear policies in place that also protect and elevate and intentionally create space to name and call out those inequities that we're noticing. And so it's important that we nurture cultures of equity. You know, it's not just a one-time thing, it's a practice. It's a practice. Allyship is a practice. And ultimately, being okay with not having all the answers or always getting it right is the key. Although each of us have different ways that we can practice this because of how we show up in our lives. For example, even though I'm a person of color, my multiracial identity gives me light skin privilege. So it's my opportunity to learn how I can elevate and dismantle systems of white supremacy so I can practice allyship with my siblings. This is something that, like, taking time, slowing down and stepping back and looking, okay, like, sometimes we get frustrated when we try to step up and be allies to people. And we're like, you know, I tried it before and like, I didn't get it right. But it's the truth is you're not going to get it right the first time. Like that's silly when we think of it in any other area of our lives, right? We just got to practice. And so being okay with making mistakes and trying to show up for somebody and getting it wrong, we need to just be okay. That's part of the journey. And I feel like what we can do with one another to help nurture this culture of, practice and dismantling perfectionism is just be generous with one another as we both learn, as we all learn together. So allyship is a practice. Next, allyship is personal. Allyship as personal. I love that. There is no one-size-fits-all solution to embodying the principles of allyship. You know, it really depends on where you're coming from, your unique social location, your status, your identity, your experience, your ethnicity. All of that really helps to make up what we call and would define as our social location. And so depending on your social location, it determines your access to power. And our responsibility is to take on, our responsibility will take on different shapes and expressions. It's personal. It's personal. But no one can do it for you. It's your journey. It's your energy. It's your opportunity. And the recognition that allyship is personal also is a beautiful reminder that we are invited to bring our full selves into the exchange of allyship, allowing our minds and our bodies and our emotions to engage with the things that we're learning. Because, you know, sometimes when we're told that we're wrong in an area, or, hey, what you did is actually harmful, and it makes me feel small, or it doesn't recognize my identity, it doesn't validate my experience, you're putting shame on me that I don't receive. And so when we are calling people out in these ways, sometimes, you know, people like can be taken back and like, oh, I'm not a bad person. But I think this is where reminding ourselves that allyship is personal is really important. It's important because we can let ourselves engage with our bodies and our emotions and ask, oh, so there's some defensiveness coming up here. What's that telling me? What do I need to learn from this? How can I try to put myself in another person's shoes and see where they're coming from when they say this feedback to me? What does it look like for me to step back and sit with those feelings so that I can show up and support them? This person took the energy and the effort to tell me how my actions made them feel. Okay, let me sit with that. And so it's a personal thing that invites us to engage with it energetically, emotionally, mentally, and those are all our personal faculties, right? And so allowing this journey to be something that we personally engage with. Allyship is a practice. Allyship is personal. And allyship is practical. Allyship is practical. And I feel like this one, I like to sit with this principle a lot because I'm such a practical person. Like for the first few years of dating my now wife, I would always just buy her like practical gifts because that's just how my brain works. I've also learned that there's value in non-practical, but when it comes to the practices of allyship, it's really important that we look for practical, tangible ways to embody this. Think of it like this. When something's damaged in your house, you know, there's a leak and let's say the toilet's spraying, it's in need of repair. And repair means that it requires a little extra energy. It requires a little extra attention. Like normally you're not worrying about the toilet, right? Normally the toilet's functioning how it should function. But when you notice that there is a system is broken and there's something out of joint, it requires more of our energy and effort. And what allyship does is it recognizes that. Allyship recognizes that disparity and injustice have been disproportionately experienced by racialized communities, by the queer community, by women over history, by immigrants. You know, it recognizes marginalized communities, and it seeks to invest energy into repairing the damage of oppression. It seeks to invest the extra energy into repairing the damage of oppression. Repair finds ways to intentionally funnel privilege and power into elevating and empowering POC folks, marginalized communities. Allyship looks like something. It looks like something. It's very practical. And so this energy exchange can take on numerous forms, like investing in personal growth through education. So learning about, you know, maybe you're like, yeah, I could definitely grow in this area of allyship when it comes to racial equity. Great. I'm so glad that you recognize that. The step one is the fact that you're here, right? We recognize that. That's energy. That's tonight. This is you investing that energy into your personal growth and education. So thank you. Because burdens are built on information. It's easy to get stuck in an echo chamber of experiences, but we have the opportunity to actively learn about the experiences, the impacts, the culture, the barriers that different marginalized communities encounter. This will help us. This will help us because burdens are built on information. The more we know, the more we're able to have empathy and compassion and have fresh creative ways and ideas to be able to creatively address those imbalances in our own families, in our own communities, in our own classrooms. And that's why it's so important that we remember that it's a practice that's personal and it looks like something. Your heart will never break for something you didn't know about. So it's so important that we learn about what's happening in our history so that we can understand why people are showing up the way they are, you know? So it's practical. It's investing in your personal growth through education. It's practical. It looks like leveraging resources to restore equilibrium. So finding ways to build bigger tables, using your voice, your influence, and your connection to bring about change in your world. So it looks like something. Prioritizing relationship building. And this is where I love to end this conversation around allyship. Prioritizing relationship building. The most impactful and mutually beneficial way to grow as an ally is in and through relationships. It's in and through relationships, right? Relationships create space for trust, understanding, and perspective to organically blossom. Relationships foster rapport, honest exchange, and relational equity on the side of both the giver and the receiver. Relationship humanizes the conversation. It's no longer those people. It's Heather. It's Adele. It's your neighbor. In any area you want to grow in your allyship, find community, find people, and bestow value on them through relationship. And I promise you, it will grow you. It will invite you into a deeper practice of allyship. It will invite you to challenge you to embody the tenets of love, to practice kindness, to practice goodness, to practice patience. So those are the 3 P's of allyship. And I'm just so excited that there's an opportunity for all of us, each and every single day, to live into the tenets of allyship. And the exciting part, the reason why I wanted to break this down for you is that those tenets, these are the tenets that we've woven into the pages of the I Am a Changemaker curriculum. And so we have taken activities and poems and stories and crafts, and we have used all of these tools to help teach those principles in easy, accessible, exciting ways for our students. And so that gets me so excited to think about the potential of what we're stepping into. And as a form of benediction and blessing, I want to just close out my time with all of you by reading this poem over you. So I wrote this poem after I wrote the curriculum. So I was sitting with these tenants and I'm building, it's 6 different lessons that go deeper and deeper into love and power, compassion, celebration, commitment. And as I'm sitting with these tenets, I'm getting excited. I'm picturing these things embodied in our communities. I'm starting to let myself daydream and think about the kind of community that we would have when we as a body commit to live into these principles. I start to think and dream about what our promised land could look like. The potential that we could step into together as we lean into love and equity, as we step up to the calling of being change makers in our own communities. And because I love creating art, I started to write about it. And so I want to close out my time with you by sharing this piece, and it's called Milk and Honey. And it is literally the overflow of my dream of what I'm seeing as we, as a community, commit to live into the principles of allyship. As we slow down and as we value our brother and sister, as we value our sibling, as we look with a pure heart and see the face of God in everyone that we interact with. Jesus says in Matthew 5, in the Beatitudes, he says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." Oh, I want to see more of God. I love when I get to see God. It'll change you. It brings celebration. And so I believe that living into the principles of allyship allow us to step into the heart of allyship, because at the heart of allyship is celebration. At the heart of allyship is celebration. Celebration is the public declaration of value. It is when we energetically acknowledge that the receiver is worthy of dignity and delight. It sees the experience, the identity, the humanity of the other, and it validates it. Celebration bestows pride. And when we feel proud, pride breeds empowerment. And empowerment is the birthplace of collective liberation. And that's what I was envisioning. That's what I'm dreaming. That's what I'm speaking over you in my benediction as I read the piece called Milk and Honey. And it's from my latest book, Homecoming, a collection of my poetic memoir. Let me sing you the story of our milk and honey, where rivers are lush and brimming. It's the song of our collective tomorrow, where our lights are bright and not dimming. It's a tale of inclusion and glory, where all are one and hopes are new. Let me sing you the story of our milk and honey until it becomes your story too. I've seen our promised land. It was exactly as we were told, and it was so much more. The rivers teemed with life as truth flowed through them. Her soil was rich with the medicine of loving kindness. Everything living flourished as the light of reciprocity shone throughout the land. But the part I can't stop thinking about, the part that still gives me the most hope, it was seeing the liberated youth who embodied their truth, using their voices and vision for good. It was seeing how power sharing and community caring brought dignity and humanity into every neighborhood. So let me sing you the story of our milk and honey, where rivers are lush and brimming. It's the song of our collective tomorrow, where our lights are bright and not dimming. It's a tale of inclusion and glory, where all are one and hopes are new. Let me sing you the story of our milk and honey until it becomes your story too. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me tonight and for just energetically engaging with this conversation. I am so excited about the curriculum. I am so excited that as a community, you're investing in this work of equity, of justice, of the Jedi work. I love that. I love that abbreviation, Jedi work: justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Growing up with Star Wars, I always liked that illustration. But thank you again for having me. Thank you for your attention and your time. Let's lean into this work of allyship and equity building together so that we can enjoy the fruits of loving kindness and help usher in our collective promised land. Thank you so much. Bless you.
Thank you so much, Heather and Mary, for sharing some of your journey, your passion, your poems, and so much of who you are. So thank you. Thank you. I'm just going to share a few words in terms of how we might, where the curriculum is at the moment. And of course, in the meantime, please feel free to continue to ask questions in the chat. So you've heard the passion and all that's gone into the development of the curriculum, the 6-session resource. It is currently in the testing phase. So many of us who worked on it are parents or people who work with children, but we're not children. We are adults, and we thought we need to actually engage children, the age group who it's designed for. So right now, the resource is with Sunday schools. They're Sunday schools who are engaging with the curriculum. They're doing the activities, and they will offer some feedback and just let us know what works, what doesn't work. Are there things that need to be changed or tweaked? And then we'll roll out the whole curriculum in the new year. So you can look for the resource in the new year. It will be widely communicated in newsletters, on the website, through ChurchX and many other places and spaces. But certainly in the new year, it will be available. And you saw one of the videos. There are several others that will also be available on YouTube, and that will be all part of the rollout. So more is coming. I would also say the resource, it does a deep dive in terms of race and how do we talk about race and racism with children, specifically ages 6 to 12. It does start naming that we are, it does offer an intersectional approach in the beginning, naming we are many things. We have multiple identities. Racial identity is one of those. And yet sometimes to be able to have the conversation about race, we need to do a deep dive to talk about race. It doesn't mean that other identities are not important. It doesn't mean that we're ignoring them, but sometimes to talk about racism, we need to talk about racism, particularly because it sometimes feels uncomfortable. Sometimes people want to say, oh, well, that's just like this other thing, so let's talk about this other thing. So this curriculum is really trying to give leaders of children ideas, resources, theological insights, so that they can talk about race with children. So again, it will be available in the new year. In the meantime, there's one resource that is available in 2021. So the 40 days of engagement have been going on for 3 years now. And the first year in 2021, we developed several children's activities and pulled them all together into one resource. So on the main page of the 40 days, if you scroll down to the very bottom, there's a download that says anti-racist children's activities. And I've put the link here in the chat. So there's some great resources there about cultural diversity, also about race. There's some fun activities. So in the meantime, that's another great resource available. So with that in mind, it's now time to engage with questions and answers with Heather and Mary. So one question that has emerged so far is, Um, for both of you or for one of you, can you speak a little bit in terms of how you might have advocated for these types of conversations to be happening in schools?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like it's really important. Like education is knowledge is power, right? And so the conversations we're having with our students and like in the school places is so important. And it starts with just your voice. I would say, like, talk to your child's teacher if your child's in school, write a letter to the parent council, make a meeting with the principal. Like it starts with just advocating and asking for these resources because they exist. There are organizations that will do facilitation work and help support these conversations. And so sometimes we just have to let the administration know that, hey, we want to have these conversations. We want our students to be having them in community together.
Great, thanks for that, Heather. Is there anything you wanted to add, Mary?
In terms of schools, yeah, I think that no, you have special. Thank you. Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll just add one little bit. I'm a parent of two young kids myself, and at my children's school, we actually started a group called Parents Against Racism, and we kind of organize on the side and we engage the administration. So a bit of what Heather was talking about, and engage other parents in thinking about what are some things that we need to be doing to be advocates for our kids in their educational process. So it's a great idea, and in some places it's being implemented. So are there other questions? There's some curiosity about your book, Heather. Wonder if you might talk a little bit about some of your poems or some of the some of the impetus behind your poems.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Thank you for that. That means a lot. Honestly, my poetry and my art is my favorite tool for helping me stay grounded when it comes to these conversations. I think that that's where my faith is a big part of that, like this belief in the reality that the darkness has not overcome the light. What John talks about in John chapter 1. And like so my faith roots me, my art roots me, and so I love to funnel a lot of hope into those pages. I like to think of myself as a dreamer, and so those dreams are often infused with prophetic promises. And I love the medium of spoken word because I believe that there is power in what we're saying about ourselves and what we're saying over our communities and what we're saying about our future and our potential together. And so channeling that energy, like sitting with it and then meticulously picking each word, because that's what poetry and art invites us into. It's my favorite. So I craft these heartfelt prayers and all of that. And then I poured it into my book that I was mentioning, Homecoming. I just released it I guess this November. It's been a year. So it's been a year, and all of that is just funneled into the pages here. And it just talks about my journey of confronting, race and homophobia and how Jesus sees me and my journey of what that's been like. Because I used to be a pastor and then I had to come out. And so, how does God feel about the conversations of justice and equity? And how does God feel about me and my identity? And so I've woven that all into the pages of my book. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you, Heather. So there's another question in the chat, and I can accompany you on this question as well. But thanks for sharing what's being done in terms of the curriculum for ages 6 to 12. So what strategies are being used or considered for engaging teens in this learning? Mary, is there anything you want to talk about in terms of first, third ministries? I can also jump in after you.
For first, third ministries, I think that it's empowering individual youth leaders or church leaders in their youth group leadership. And so getting these resources and conversations into their hands, having their conversations to then create the brave spaces and being a part of community and relationship building. And so I think from the first third level, working with leaders and offering resources there so that they can then work with their youth and be in relationship with their youth. One strategy.
That's one strategy. Absolutely. Great. Thanks, Mary. And another strategy is that there's some work that's being engaged with Indigenous and racialized youth. There's been some gatherings and thinking through ways of developing their own leadership. So ways of challenging internalized racism, for example, and enabling people to be the fullest leaders that they can. So that's another strategy. And there's more that can be rolled out, but there's various ways and places that teenagers are being engaged in addition to younger children. So far there are not additional questions in the chat. What I'll name though is that some of the resources that we've talked about we will put onto ChurchX. So we can include a link to some of the youth resources that are developed. So the Indigenous Racialized Youth Retreat, for example, the anti-racist children's activities we'll put there. So it'll be a space where you can find some additional resources as well. But before we close off the evening, just wanted to see if Heather and Mary have some additional words or closing words before we end the evening.
I'm so grateful for this space to be able to explore. Grateful for you, Heather, and all of the beautiful art that you have shared. And in the journey of my journey, it just continues each day. And just to know and hold up those 3 Ps and having that alliteration I didn't have before. So tuck that into my toolbox and the journey in allyship and anti-racism work and working with children and youth is just each day and becoming more aware. So I'm really grateful for this time and for you, Adele, and all your work. Excited to keep the journey going.
Yeah, I would just echo that. Like, what a blessing to be in this room tonight and to share this space and to nurture these dreams of liberation, of mutual flourishing. I believe that this is exactly the kind of work that Jesus invited us into as followers of the way of love, right? Mm-hmm. And so thank you I feel honored to be able to journey alongside all of you in my personal practical practice of allyship. So I just speak a blessing over you as you lean into and grow into being a change maker, because we're all called to be change makers. Thank you so much, Adele, for your leadership and your vision. And thank you, Mary, for your stories. I so appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary and Heather, once again. Just before we close off, Mary, we're wondering if you can just hold up the 3 resources that you had named earlier, please.
I can, definitely. So the first one is God's Holy Darkness. Amazing, beautiful picture book by Sherry Green and Becca Selnick. Goodnight Racism by Ibram X. Kendi. And the one that just landed that I need to spend more time with is The Peace Table. It's a storybook Bible.
Thank you, Mary. And thank you, Heather, again. And thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Brian, for doing tech quietly in the background. Thanks, everyone, for your engagement. And we will be in touch about the curriculum when it's finalized and ready to go. And we hope that you might be able to share that with your communities of faith as well. As we close off this evening, once you leave, there'll be a small survey that will pop up. So would invite you to spend a couple minutes responding to that survey. And then for those of you who are available, there's no 40 Days live session next week on October 31st. The next session will resume on November the 7th. So hope that some of you will rejoin us at that time. Thanks once again for being here and blessings on your evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.